We already know how Botox ruins acting, but with this video, we focus on how it ruins our connections with everybody, even sexual function. And to the person whose face is paralyzed with Botox, it can be quite a lonely place inside. Because the human face is the primary instrument of social bonding. We read emotions in others by mimicking their expressions. And we feel our own emotions partly through the feedback our facial muscles send back to the brain. For other people to connect with us, they mimic our expressions, and therefore they are able to connect with what we are feeling. If you are unable to show with your expressions what you feel, even if you are actually feeling something, you are left unable to communicate those emotions. A Botox frozen face both minimizes visible vulnerability and weakens the mimicry and expressivity through which another person could actually reach you. In order to genuinely bond or connect with another human being, it requires vulnerability that comes from exposure and intimacy. In other words, letting another see what's inside us. So if intimacy requires exposure, then anything that hides that exposure will impair intimacy. The hidden self is an unintimate self. Vulnerability and intimacy are structurally inseparable. You cannot have the other without the other. In the raise and shower interpersonal process model of intimacy, intimacy is created when one person reveals personally significant information and the other person responds in a supportive or understanding way, or more directly, experiences that the other is responsive to that disclosure. And that responsiveness requires seeing something real. Perceived partner responsiveness, feeling understood, validated, and cared for, is the active ingredient that converts disclosure into intimacy. And what is it? We need to see. Research on intimacy shows that emotional disclosure predicts feeling close and connected more strongly than pure informational disclosure. So people feel closer when we let our emotions be visible through what we say and how we say and what we show on our face. Sharing only information and facts with words creates less intimacy than sharing the feelings underneath. And how we share our feelings is by our facial expressions. And then what erodes a bond is self-concealment. Hiding personal information is associated with lower relationship well-being. So the individual who underwent the procedure to feel more confident and accepted in social settings may instead experience a sense of isolation. They are physically present, but the biological tools required to establish a deep empathetic connection with others have been compromised. For example, seeing genuine enjoyment from a smile very often recreates the muscle around the eyes, which lifts the cheeks and creates the crow's feet crinkle. The eye narrowing many people associate with a real smile, called a Duchenne smile, and that has been long treated as a marker of genuine positive emotion rather than a purely polite or posed smile, because it is more difficult to fake. So when a person is able to recreate the muscles that show genuine emotion, the positive emotions and the negative, it directly creates more trust and sincerity between people. That is because when you look at someone who is smiling or frowning, your own facial muscles mimic those micro-expressions within milliseconds. This mimicry sends sensory signals to your brain, allowing you to recognize and internally simulate what the other person is feeling. When an individual receives Botox injections, the targeted facial muscles are temporarily paralyzed. This paralysis creates a dual directional barrier to empathy. First, for the injected one, because the individual's facial muscles cannot move fully, they cannot accurately mimic the expressions of the people they are interacting with. This makes it difficult for them to read others as well, as it blunts their own feelings because their muscles don't send the signals to the brain on what they are feeling. Because the individual's face remains partially immobile, observer's face mimics that flat expression. This makes it difficult for others to empathize, sympathize, or accurately react to them. A research published in 2003 by Emily Butler and James Cross examined what happens when people suppress their emotions during face-to-face interactions. The study found that suppressing emotional expression causes significant social corrosion. They showed that hiding emotion acted as a barrier for communication, lowered mutual affiliation, reduced interest in future friendship, and increased physiological stress for the suppressors themselves and the partner. The researchers concluded that suppressing emotional expression is a high-cost strategy with virtually no benefits in social interactions. When one person becomes emotionally unreadable and unresponsive, the other person's body registers their interaction as stress, weakening the drive to form a connection. So a pharmacologically frozen face produces a similar surface, reduced expressivity and reduced responsiveness. And how do we behave when we are stressed? Often our behavior moves us away from genuine connection. Fight, irritability, defensiveness, sniping, escalating conflict over small things. Flight, leaving, changing the subject, reaching for the phone, ending the interaction. Freeze, going blank, giving short answers, becoming unresponsive. Fawn, over-accommodating, people-pleasing, smoothing over, which looks like connection but is actually another defense that avoids true exposure. Threat vigilance, scanning for signs of rejection or judgment. Notice that almost all of these either reduce presence, reduce authenticity, or reduce responsiveness. The three things the intimacy research says connection is built from. Stress is almost by definition the body preparing to protect rather than to connect. And this is so unfavorable because two people who perhaps do want to reach each other and have a desire to connect can very well be pushed apart by a surface that makes connecting feel unsafe, and then by the stress-driven reflexes that follow. Now, this analysis is not complete without seeing the attachment style this leads to. If secure attachment is characterized by comfort with depending on others and being seen with vulnerability, that is the opposite to what these stressful interactions lead to. When repeatedly attempting to connect with another person produces stress, unresponsiveness, or distress, it typically leads to insecure attachment styles. For example, insecure avoidant attachment. When attempts to connect are consistently met with an unresponsive, expressionless, or rejecting partner, a dynamic demonstrated experimentally in Tronic's still face experiment. The person seeking connection experiences heightened psychological stress. To protect themselves from the ongoing stress of unresponsiveness, the partner reduces visible attachment seeking, avoids showing distress, and becomes more self-reliant as a protective strategy. So what happens when we are the most intimate in bed? A study found something interesting about decreased sexual satisfaction. So if paralyzed muscles on the face does not send signals to the brain about the emotion experienced, this includes arousal and enjoyment. Facial expressions of arousal are part of the experience and communication of sexual excitement. The partner reads on the face subtle cues on timing and enjoyment, etc. Freezing them reduces both the felt experience and the partner's feedback channel. In a 2018 study on facial expressions and embodied emotion, Psychologist Michael Lewis found that Botox treatment was associated with reduced orgasm frequency and satisfaction. When compared to untreated women, the Botox-treated group experienced a drastic shift toward lower sexual satisfaction, with nearly 9 out of 10 treated participants scoring lower than the average person whose facial muscles remained fully expressive. The authors note that facial expressions during orgasm may be important for emotional closeness and pair bonding too. Without this felt connection, the act very much might shift to superficial performance and self-objectification, attending to oneself as an object to be looked at. Sometimes maintaining a perfectly attractive physical appearance becomes a way of serving the partner's gaze rather than meeting the partner as the attention stays on the surface, on how one looks, rather than in the encounter, on how one feels and is felt. This drive for perfect looks is in functional terms a defense against the vulnerability of being truly seen, and that creates the very disconnection it was meant to prevent. If you want to learn more, the next video to watch is about visually driven arousal that is experienced in porn particularly. Another one on the screen goes more deeper into self-objectification and how to switch to internal experience.